Today on the Big 6 in 60, the Thunder dominate against the Lakers.
Historic win, another 30-plus point victory.
The Raiders host Fernando Mendoza.
Fernando Mendoza was coming in for a top 30 visit.
And Sonny Dykes gets an extension at TCU.
We've had conversations of hot seat or no hot seat. So the hot seat conversation is over.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Thunder didn't just beat the Lakers yesterday, OKC overwhelmed them and kept looking every bit like a team ready for another deep postseason run. Locked On Thunder host Rylan Stiles breaks down the win.
What are your thoughts on the Thunder's historic win, another 30-plus point victory for Oklahoma City, and another beatdown of the Los Angeles Lakers?
I think the most impressive thing was that it was just a take care of business performance. And I know that the Lakers didn't have Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves, Marcus Smart. So this was not the Lakers, right? But you still got to play NBA talent. It's still on the road. You still got to take care of business. You can't kind of play with your food. And the Lakers, they came out and they were competitive for a while. Halfway through the second quarter, this game was tied 42-42. So credit to the Lakers for keeping it close for a while. And then the Thunder just took care of business. They closed the first half on a 23-5 run. I think the most impressive part, besides just taking care of business, was the three-point shooting. I mean, the team as a whole shot better from the three-point line than the Lakers shot from the free throw line. The Thunder were 21 of 41 on the night for 51%, just a great three-point shooting performance. And when this Thunder team is hitting from deep, they're just unbeatable because, Shea's going to get his 30. The defense is going to be elite every night. And if role players are hitting their threes and they're anywhere near 40%, just good luck beating this team.
Good luck beating them. And that's what we've talked about all season long, Brandon. It's about this team being streaky, but capable shooters. And it's just what version of them are you going to get? And that's why three-point shooting, I think, is safely a weakness for them, of that it's the unknown of yes, they might come out and look like gangbusters from beyond the arc and just light the nets on fire. And at that point, I agree with you. If this Thunder team is hitting an above average number of threes in any game to an above average percentage, they're unbeatable. You can talk about all the talent you want to in Boston and in San Antonio and in Denver. But if Oklahoma City can cash in from beyond the arc, you know that they do everything else at a championship level, and you just cannot overcome all of the different ways that the Thunder can beat you at that point. Now, where you get some advantages when the Thunder do not have a good three-point shooting night, when they have that below average to bad offensive production from distance, it allows you to kind of make up some of that area and catch the Thunder, so to say. And that's been a direct tie to a lot of their losses this year. It's been injuries and it's been poor three-point shooting. But I'm glad that you kept referencing taking care of business, because I get it, folks. This was a game against Drew Timme. Drew Timme started an NBA game today. Drew Timme started for the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers, not the South Bay Lakers. The Lakers, playing in the arena formerly known as Staples Center, where the greats have played. Andrew Timme. And I think that whenever you look at that, yes, it's not impressive to win this game on that regard, but it is impressive to go out and handle your business. And it's not that long ago, Brandon. This season has flown by. We were talking at the end of December, at the start of January. Look, I don't think that this team is hungover, we were saying, but we thought perhaps the 0-0 mentality and the 1 of 82 mentality was a bygone era for this team coming off of a championship. And at that time, at that juncture of the season, it was correct to question that, because even in their wins, they did not start out with the appropriate energy, with the appropriate attention to detail, with the appropriate outcome. And they happened to win it in the second half because they were just more talented. Now you look at the run that they've been on to close this season, they're approaching every game with the proper focus, the proper intensity, the proper energy, and they're getting the proper results. We talked about this being historic. Brandon, the Thunder, according to this Twitter account that I follow called @BrandonRabar on Twitter, the Thunder are the first team in NBA history to win 3 straight games by 35-plus points. And they've won their last 3 games by 43, 35, 36. It's been a complete and total domination for this club. And I think that when you look at this, obviously, does this game matter? Like these 48 minutes to me, Brandon, they don't individually matter, but they matter in terms of shaping context. Like the stuff you saw today that you've seen over a body of work of the last quarter of the season, the last half of the season, or the entire season. That's stuff that matches what you felt about this team through any of those segments. That's the part that matters, that you feel confident enough to extrapolate out into the future and take into next week and the coming weeks and the NBA playoffs. And that's where this game did matter from the standpoint of taking care of business and from the standpoint of guys like Isaiah Joe and improved Chet Holmgren. These things being reaffirmed on the court, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like you can take this Thunder season into 3 separate segments. They started off 24-1, coming off of that championship. And again, they looked unbeatable. And there was all the talk of, can they get to 70 wins? Can they get to 74 wins or break the all-time record? And then it made sense. They had a midseason, by their standards, slump, in which they, by their standards, struggled a little bit. But I think, all those injuries that they sustained and finally kind of coming off of all that momentum that you had from the championship and the 24-1 start, it made sense. But this renewed focus, now they are 18-1 in their last 19 games. So if you take the beginning part of the season and this last part of the season, which, by the way, the last part of the season has been against some really good competition, like take tonight, take the Jazz out, but they've beaten some really good playoff teams and some contending teams during this stretch. The first segment and the last segment, they are now 42-2 in those 2 beginning and ending segments combined. Pretty impressive start and finish to the season.
And I think that it's great to highlight that because this team is a win away from going wire to wire as the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. And how quickly that we change the flavor of the month, as we say on this show, to like San Antonio being all about they're the new kids on the block. They're coming for the Thunder. They're coming to dominate the NBA. All the Spurs are legitimate, true contenders, but you also can't lose sight of the fact that the Spurs have done all this winning recently, and they have felt so unbeatable, and they have felt so incredible. And yet the Thunder have won at the same clip because they continue to have that 1 seed. They've continued to stave off San Antonio, even as San Antonio has that tiebreaker in hand, which should help you and now won't even come into play if OKC can get 1 more. Let's talk Isaiah Joe. In this game, he was on fire. He goes 6 for 9. All of his shots were from beyond the arc. He had 18 points in this game, a plus 31 in this contest in his 19 minutes. He also in this game had 2 rebounds, as he's been a sneaky good rebounder for his size and position throughout this last stretch of the season and really throughout the totality of this season. But Brandon, Isaiah Joe, a player who you and I, whenever we're making it through those off-season podcasts, we were deliberating on, discussing, dishing on what his future role with Oklahoma City might be in this year's season. And we came to the same conclusion of this was a huge prove-it year for Isaiah Joe, of a guy who's been spotty in playoff minutes, as a guy who has not exactly thrived in meaningful playoff opportunities. He's had success in garbage time of games one way or the other, but hasn't exactly been pivotal in tightly contested contests to this point in his postseason affairs. But this year, Brandon, things feel different for Isaiah Joe. You look at the movement shooting of his ability to relocate around the perimeter, his ability to get shots off coming off DHOs with Isaiah Hartenstein and bend defenses. He's really leveraging his shooting gravity at a better clip. Not only can he be a stationary catch and shoot guy, not only can he shoot it in transition, not only can he launch it from 2 steps behind the line, not only can he do it off the move as we've described, but off of that movement and off of that attention that defenses give him, whenever he gets a hard closeout, he can dribble into that mid-range and either pull up in the mid-range or dish it out as a facilitator. He can do so many different things with the ball in his hands right now that I do think that Isaiah Joe will be pivotal for this team in the playoffs, and the Thunder will need him to be pivotal in these playoffs, because if you look back at last year's title run, We talked about, it's amazing they won the championship, but their half-court offense without Shea on the court and their three-point shooting, it's remarkable that they overcame that to win a championship. And Isaiah Joe, his impact allows you to really feel comfortable about the two key areas from a year ago that almost cost you and almost bit you. And that's a big deal. And I think that I'm buying into the sample size that we've seen from Isaiah Joe with just 3 games left of the season. We've seen it all year long whenever he's been healthy. I'm buying into Joe being a playoff difference maker. Are you still in wait and see mode, or are you like me buying some stock in Isaiah Joe?
100% buying in. I think he's the real deal. I think he's a difference maker. I think he's an X factor for the Thunder going into the playoffs. This version of Isaiah Joe is a weapon that they didn't have in the playoffs last year. Obviously, they had Isaiah Joe, but I do think that given his shot diet and his versatility this year and his improved defense and his just improved all around game this year, I think we're going to see him with a bigger role, more minutes in these playoffs. I'm with you. I especially like that tandem with Isaiah Hartenstein. They work so well together. All those, kind of behind the back, between the legs, bounce passes that he does to Joe. And it just feels like money anytime those two are working together, but also as an outlet when he plays with Shea, like the space and the gravity that he provides for Shea or J-Dub or AJ Mitchell. I just feel like he makes every lineup a little more scary for the opposition because there's this threat of one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA who can launch it from anywhere, who can now have a quick trigger, is not afraid to shoot it with a hand in his face from anywhere on the court. And I just think it makes the Thunder that much more dangerous as a team. And like you said, in the half-court offense in the playoffs, when defenses get tighter, a guy like Isaiah Joe can help to bend the defense. And you're also adding into the mix this year AJ Mitchell, which you didn't have last year. So you've kind of got 2 new weapons to play with if you're Mark Daigneault in the playoffs. And I think those 2 guys especially could be X factors that they didn't really have as much in the playoffs last year.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. It's over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed right here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. Houston stormed back to beat Phoenix last night, turning a rough start into another big win as the Rockets keep building momentum late in the season. Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets has his full reaction.
119-105 final score. And man, this final score does not illustrate just how bad this game felt for the first, 12 or so minutes. This game felt personal for the Suns. There were a lot of firsts in this game. This was Kevin Durant's first time facing the Suns in Phoenix, because reminder, he missed the earlier game this season in Phoenix. This was Jalen Green's first time playing against the Rockets at all in any capacity this season. And you could certainly feel it, like with kind of, ramifications, as far as Western Conference playoff seeding goes and it being this late in the season and both teams wanting to play their best brand of basketball going into the playoffs. This game felt like a playoff style game, playoff intensity, playoff vibes. And honestly, like the Suns took it personally and they came out and they were the aggressors early on, right? Like the Rockets looked woefully unprepared to start this game. Phoenix goes up 16 to no, not even, it was like 16-5. And then that lead ballooned out to like 26-5. I think at one point was the worst stretch to start this game for the Rockets. I mean, the Suns at one point had a 24-0 run in the first quarter. Like that's how bad it was for the Rockets. Yeah, they were trailing 26-5 at one point, down 21. That was as bad as it got about halfway through the first quarter. And I'll tell you what, it did not look like it was going to be a great game from that point on. Rockets managed to lock in after that miserable start, though. It was a rough start. Kevin Durant was awful to start the game. Alperen Sengun was awful to start the game. The Rockets did not look like they were ready to deal with the Suns. The Suns were treating this like, again, they wanted revenge on the Rockets, right? Jalen Green came out with a personal vendetta against the Rockets. Kevin Durant did not look great against his former team, right? Whether it's nerves, what have you, the emotions of the first game back for him in Phoenix. There's a lot going on in this game. But the way that the Rockets are able to turn this one around is they dialed up their number one strength, the strength that has been at times a bit of a flaw for this team throughout the season, and they flat out crushed the Suns on the offensive glass, generated so many extra opportunities just to shoot the ball. Rockets finished with 100 field goal attempts in this game. The Suns only had 75. Now, granted, the Suns went to the free throw line 39 times, so that certainly helps make up that deficit a little bit, but it also doesn't account for the fact, like when you factor in the Rockets went to the free throw line 16 times and you like look at the delta between those two, 23 extra free throws does not quite equate to 25 flat out extra shot attempts, right? And that's what the Rockets did. They flat out dominated the glass. They attacked the offensive glass relentlessly, and they came away the better for it in this game. And they were able to slowly but surely dig themselves out of the deficit that they created for themselves in the first quarter. They finished this game plus 20 in the second chance points department, 37-17. As a team, the Rockets had 24 offensive rebounds as a team. To put that in perspective, the Suns as a team had 24 defensive rebounds as an entire team. The Rockets had as many offensive rebounds as the Suns did defensive rebounds in this game. Just straight up dominance on the glass. 55 rebounds overall. And you got it from a little bit from everybody. In fact, I think pretty much everybody that played like actual rotation minutes, except for Aaron Holiday, was the only Rocket to not record an offensive rebound that actually got meaningful rotation minutes in this game. Across the board, Alperen Sengun had 7 offensive rebounds. Amin Thompson had 6 offensive rebounds. Tari had 4 offensive rebounds, including that really big one where he I guess I don't know if that one counts, where he tied up Devin Booker. That would have been a jump ball, but still, like another great moment, generating extra possession, right? Because that was a big moment later in the game. Couple offensive rebounds for Josh Okogie, and then across the board, a smattering of ones for KD, Jabari. Like even Reed Shepherd had an offensive rebound, right? Like, and a putback immediately afterwards. The offensive rebounding was the Rockets' lifeline in this game. It kept them afloat between a combination of Kevin Durant being woken up by Dillon Brooks. We'll talk about that key moment. We'll talk about the Dillon Brooks KD stuff, as well as the Alperen Sengun and Min Thompson takeover at the top of the fourth quarter as a couple of the key inflection points in this game. But through a combination of Kevin Durant's offense getting going in the second quarter and the Rockets just leaning so heavily into the offensive rebounding and the second chance points, as well as their defense dialing it up. Like the Suns basically got whatever they wanted in the first quarter. They were feasting. They were knocking down threes. They were living in the paint. Suns wound up shooting 61%, just under 61% in the first quarter, and 50% from three. And then in each subsequent quarter after that, the Rockets held them to just 25% shooting in the second quarter, and then just 33% shooting in the third quarter. And then fourth quarter, at least before, until like the very, very, very end of the game when it was kind of, pretty much almost over, 44%. So, I mean, Rockets basically locked in defensively in those middle two quarters, the second quarter, the third quarter. You could tell, too, there was a point where the Rockets came back, and when they really started to mount their rally, right, they came back and they were playing like a more aggressive, physical team. They came out and, like, I'll agree with any of Ime Udoka's usual coachisms about this team. They were getting punked. They were getting out hustled. They were getting outworked. They were getting out physicaled. They didn't have the right aggression. All the different buzzwords you want to throw out there. That is exactly how this team was playing to start the game. And then it wasn't even really the first full 12 minutes, because they started to like respond after that timeout where it was 26-5. They came back and they rallied back after that, right? Because the rest of the way from that point on, they held the Suns to just 11 more points. After that point on, they themselves outscored the Suns 16-11 after that timeout, and then carrying some of that momentum from the first quarter and then rallying into the second quarter and then subsequently the third quarter to be able to put themselves in position for the group at the top of the fourth to do what they did to ultimately take over and seal this game and seal this win. But I also think the number one takeaway from this, before we move on and talk about kind of the key moments from this game, the key stretches, the inflection points, this showed a ton of mental resiliency from this Rockets team. And they've shown that repeatedly now, like after the losses against the Bulls, the collapse against the Wolves, and then having that team meeting, kind of, rallying the troops a little bit. This team could have just rolled over and died right after that embarrassing loss to the Wolves. That could have been a breaking point for this team. Like that ridiculous, historic OT loss could have been the dagger that just sunk this ship, right? Tore the sails to shreds, whatever, dead in the water, whatever analogies you want to use. Instead, the Rockets responded in a big way, and now they've got all this momentum. And I think this type of game, right, winning this way, going down big early and then rallying and coming back, because they had to rally and come back against the Wolves. They just couldn't quite complete the comeback. And then it went to OT, and then they just couldn't deliver an OT, right? Go up big and lose that lead. This showed a lot of mental maturity from this Rockets team to go down that big against a team that you have a lot of emotions and history tied up with the Kevin Durant trade and all this stuff, and former teammates on both sides, Kevin Durant, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, all that good stuff. And yet they turned around. They didn't just mope and pout and mail it in and, we went down 21, whatever, let the Suns coast to win. No, they grinded it out. They played their brand of basketball. They locked in defensively. They got on the offensive glass, and they dragged themselves back into this game. And then they took it over later on. Once Alperen Sengun knocked the rust off and got back to playing his brand of basketball in the fourth quarter, they took off. It's a great game. I think it might be the best game of the season. Might be the best win of the season for me in my book.
Toronto rolled past Miami and the Heat yesterday, and the Raptors keep climbing behind a strong push from their core as the East standings tighten up. Zulfi Sheik and Dwayne Notice from Locked On Raptors take you through the win.
There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This was a must-win game for the Raptors if they wanted to avoid the play-in. And look, they controlled their destiny, quite honestly. I know there's 3.5 games between seeds 5 through 10. The Raptors were above Philly. They have a game in hand against Philadelphia. So this home and home set, I guess, basically against the Heat was a must-win situation. And to the Raptors' credit, they came out with that sense of urgency and desperation they needed. They shot 50% from the field, 43% from deep, but they also didn't settle in this game. Dominated inside for 70 points in the paint. They were plus 36 there. They're now 23-2 when they score at least 60 points in the paint. So again, getting inside means good things. They held the Heat, mind you, the number 2 scoring team in the NBA, to just to under 100 points for just the 6th time this season. And the Raptors are actually a team that's done that to them 3 times. So half the time the Heat hasn't scored 100 points, it's been because of the Raptors. Miami shot 36% from the field, 27% from deep. Scotty and BI were also awesome. They had 25 and 23. It's the first time since February 4th that they both had 20 points in the same game. Bench was also great, 37 points from the bench. Shed with 11 assists, Mama with 11. Jacoby hit 9 threes. So like I said, this was a top to bottom effort, Dwayne. How impressed were you to see the Raptors come out with this result? And again, a must win for them.
Yeah, a must win indeed. But I was super impressed, Z, because I didn't expect this at all. I thought it was going to be a much closer game or a struggle, especially with how the Raptors have been playing recently. But they really appeared to be locked in. Even from the jump ball, the first possession for the Raptors was a design play for for BI to go downhill. He got to his left hand, nice layup. It seems very intentional. We talk about the intentional offense. So the Raptors were on the same page there. You mentioned their defense. I think that they weren't in too many scramble situations. Their rotations were tighter. The secondary help was actually there. They caused a lot of turnovers, and they were able to run out because of it. But I think the Raptors did a great job today just setting the tone and keeping the tone for the rest of the game. Obviously, the Heat didn't play their best basketball, and we know the Heat is accustomed to, they say Heat culture, and that was absent tonight. But the Raptors took advantage of it, and you mentioned that the paint dominance was incredible, just seeing them not settle. The Heat did something we haven't seen in a while, which is play the zone against the Raptors for a larger part of the game. And the Raptors, I thought, did a great job of handling that, just getting to the nose of the defense. Too many times we saw, a guy like RJ or a guy like Scotty flash to the middle part of the zone. And I think, again, they were able to wreak havoc because of it, make great decisions, whether it was passing it down low to the interior passing. Raptors are great at that, or just finishing. But it also created a lot of second chance opportunities, right? When you're in a zone, it's hard because as a defender, you're guarding a spot, you're not guarding a man. And because of that, it's harder to box out. And we saw CMB, we saw guys like Jacoby Walter get a second three off of offensive rebound. So I think they were just really well tuned today and sound. And it was really impressive to see. But going forward, you have to know that the Heat are going to come out on Thursday wanting that get back because they didn't play the kind of basketball they're accustomed to playing. But I was super impressed with how the Raptors played from top to bottom. I'm actually extremely happy with the fact that IQ is back, and I know he's not 100%, but just having one of your main guys back, your facilitators, your guys that could shoot the ball, stretch the floor, even not having him at 100, he could still be a decoy. So his presence definitely influenced the Raptors' offense and elevated it to another level. So I like that. And again, him and Jakob Porto just getting in that two-man action and making things happen for other players. So again, IQ's return was definitely big for the Raptors getting this win, but I was overall impressed today.
Yeah, I think those are a lot of really good points there, Dwayne. Emmanuel quickly, like you said, he did come back after missing 8 games with plantar fasciitis. He played 17 minutes. He is on a minutes restriction, obviously, as he's ramping back up. 3 points, 1 of 3 shooting. It's obviously going to be a bit rusty coming off that, but he had a couple assists as well. His activity was really good. But like you said, it was a top-down effort, and they were all committed to the things they had to do properly. Rebounding, I thought, was a fantastic part for the Raptors game tonight. And it was guys like CMB off the bench with 8 rebounds, being super active on the glass. Jakob Poeltl was attacking the glass, which is something we did not see against the Celtics. He got beat down in that matchup. He had more rebounds in the first 3 minutes of this game than he had in 20 minutes against the Celtics. That's how much of a difference it was and how much that helped the Raptors. You mentioned the second chance points because of that rebounding. The Raptors had 23 second chance points to Miami 6. So again, it's just creating extra opportunities. They're capitalizing on it. And another thing was, it was closing possessions for them. Like, that's the big thing. When you get into a possession battle against teams when you're not the greatest three-point shooting team, losing those extra chances really hurts the Raptors. The last 3 games, the Raptors had given up 44 offensive rebounds. So the coaching staff said at halftime of this game on the broadcast, that's a priority. We want to keep that up, close possessions, and be able to get going on offense how we want to play and dictate the pace. So that really helped the Raptors tonight. And we talked about the things they did defensively. How about limiting Bam Adebayo to 7 points on 2 of 13 shooting? This dude was quiet entire game. 83 points on who? Definitely not the Raptors. Like, he was shut down this game. I thought Scotty and CMB were great, but also I'll give Jakob Poeltl his credit. Dude was moving his puppies out there for a guy his size and obviously a ground-bound big. Like, I'm sure you can appreciate seeing a 7-footer like him do this. Like, Bam was just trying to dance around outside the perimeter a lot, and Jakob Poeltl, credit to him, was really keeping up. So I thought that was awesome. But like you said, all-around effort, guys were committed. They were consistent with the game plan, and the Raptors got to bear the fruit because of it. And now, Dwayne, I want to get your thoughts on the second quarter specifically, because that's when I felt like everything really hit a flow state for the Raptors.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Yeah, Dwayne, really fun second quarter for the Raptors. They outscored the Heat by 8 in that quarter. They shot 54%. Miami was held to just 33. It also included a 19-4 run where I just felt like everyone understood their roles, kind of to what you were saying earlier. BI and RJ, they were doing all the tough shot taking and making. I think they had 7 and 5 points each. The bench guys were doing simple things, but it was effective. Shed kind of managing the offense, running the game, but he was also taking advantage when the Heat, like you said, that zone that the Heat played, and they play the most zone in the NBA. He made them pay for it once when they went under on a screen. He had a nice little step back 3. Mamu attacking closeouts, being aggressive. He had 6 points, 2 of 2 from the field in the second. And CMB, again, just everywhere defensively. The dude was plus 16 in the second quarter, and he just had 2 points and a steal. Like, he dominated his minutes. And then also, like you said, Scotty Barnes just doing everything against that Heat zone, just constantly crashing middle, cleaning things up off the glass as well. Just a lot of good activity from him. So, like, everyone kind of hit a flow in that second quarter. And just to me, it was just like, this is what Raptors basketball can look like when they're really taking advantage of things and people know their roles.
Yeah, everybody being aligned, being on the same page, and we mention it all the time, but being a star in their own role, not doing too much, not forcing the issue. Even guys like B.I., I felt like today he was way more patient. Even seeing the double teams, allowing them to come to him, he was able to make the right plays. I like that he caught the ball a lot in the middle part of the floor, right around that nail area, because it allows you to see from both sides, to see the complete floor on the offensive end, whether it's a zone or a man. You're able to see the help defense, where they're loading up, and he was very patient. He used a lot of pivots today, and that interior, and then it made it easier for him when he started making tougher shots throughout the game. But you mentioned that everybody in their activity was outstanding tonight. I think everybody understood the magnitude of this basketball game, and they approached it like so. They were super locked in, playing in front of their home crowd, just understanding that, you know, what's at stake. And I think they stepped up to the challenge tonight. And you mentioned a guy like Jakob Porto, like, man, the way he's able to move his feet, very nimble out there. And Bam is definitely one of those tweener bigs, right? He's not always going to get you back to the basket. He's going to try and take you as far away as he can from the net and try to dance. And like you said, he did a great job of staying in front, not biting. But also shout out to the guys like Scotty, who were just in nail help and just using their length to kind of, you know, prevent a guy from Bam from thinking that's an open shot, and then he has to kick it out in this late shot clocks. And man, the Raptors are just on one accord tonight. You mentioned it, Z. It's so special, and it's entertaining, especially as a fan, when you see them kind of play on one page like this. So hopefully they can keep that up going forward, because it's such a beautiful game of basketball to see when the Raptors are playing together like that.
And like you said, I don't think Miami's going to let that happen to them twice. If they did, I'd be very surprised. We talk about Heat culture and all that stuff. They're trying to figure it out themselves. But after you get beat down like that, they're not going anywhere. They're staying in Toronto. They're going to play this game in Toronto again on Thursday. You know the Heat are going to be pissed off about this. They were kind of feisty towards the end of the game here. You had Trace Jackson-Davis, and I don't even remember the Heat player off the bench. Myron Gardner. They got into a little moment at the end of this game, but that just speaks to like the emotions of it, right? You're getting punked. You know you got to play these guys again, so you want to take any little advantage you can get out of this matchup. So it will definitely be interesting to see how the Heat and Raptors handle the second game on Thursday.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. It's over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed right here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. The Raiders are still doing quarterback homework ahead of the draft, with Fernando Mendoza making a visit as Las Vegas keeps sorting through its options. Your boy Q from Locked On Raiders has more on that visit.
Clint Kubiak was going to get his first opportunity to address the team, and then Fernando Mendoza was coming in for a top 30 visit. It's his only visit that he has lined up, and went out to dinner with the Raiders on Tuesday night. But pretty excited because today in day two, following their workout program, and again, it's not like they're out there installing the offense. It's not like they're out there running 7-on-7. It's all about rehab, strength and conditioning, and meetings. That's all they can do at this stage of the game. So that's probably going to get wrapped up around maybe noon or 12:15. We're actually going to get an opportunity to meet with Kirk Cousins and kind of do a little Q&A with him in the media room there at 12:30. So definitely looking forward to that. We'll definitely bring some of the conversation that we had with Captain Kirk. We'll talk to him coming up at 12:30, and I'll bring that to the podcast coming up tomorrow. But I do look forward to that. It'll be our first opportunity to talk to Kirk and see what he's all about, and his opportunity with the Silver and Black. So that's going to happen today. We also found out on Tuesday about Fernando Mendoza, a no-go to the draft. And, I'm always excited about the draft. I'm always excited about the coverage that we're able to provide and being there at the draft. And I always talk about, man, as soon as the Raiders pick their guy, as long as he's in the green room, I'll get that interview like I did with Tyree Wilson, like I did last year with Ashton Genty. So saw this tweet from Adam Schefter, projected number 1 overall pick. Fernando Mendoza has informed the NFL that he is not planning to attend the NFL draft in Pittsburgh this month. Per sources, Mendoza wants to share the draft experience with his family in Miami. And that's fine. That's cool, right? A lot of players decide that they do want to share it with their family. But again, because I'm thinking of the coverage, because I'm thinking of going to Pittsburgh, getting that interview, bringing it back to the table, not only the podcast, the radio station, even ESPN radio, I got all these plans I'm thinking about moving forward. So I quote tweeted Shefty and said, well, this is less than ideal. And man, I'll tell you, that was the biggest mistake I ever made. You would think that I was talking about someone's mama, and I get it. Again, I understand that Fernando wants to spend that time with his family. I remember Joe Thomas, who decided he was going to go fishing with his pops instead of go to the draft, and that was the 2007 draft when the Raiders took, Jamarcus Russell number 1 overall, and the Browns took Joe Thomas as their first pick. And obviously, he's a Hall of Famer. And look, so again, that's their right. I understand, with his mom and what she's dealing with, traveling may be something less than ideal that they want to deal with. It's so funny because I tried to explain it so many times to people that were tweeting at me like, why is it less than ideal? What's the big deal? People were cussing me out and everything. I was like, hey man, look, it wasn't that serious. It was just about the coverage, and that's it. I don't really care where he chooses to spend his time for the draft. That was the only reason that I even made a comment. Heaven forbid that I use my own Twitter account to mention something that I don't know has to do with me. But I realized on Tuesday that people love to be angry just to be angry, right? So if I didn't already know that, I know that. And so I had to eventually just mute that conversation. I'm really trying to do the best I can with keep all that negativity from around me. And it's so easy to fall into that cesspool. Usually I try to hear everybody out. I try to reason with people. I try to, talk to people in a respectful way. I just realized that that's not the way to do it anymore. Even with calls that we get here on the show, I try not to go there with all the people that are angry and just want to stir up some mess. And it's not worth it, right? It's not worth it for everybody. There's way too many people that have a lot of positivity in their life. And I'm not trying to live life through rainbows and puppy dogs and all that good stuff. But man, some of that negativity don't need. So it was just wild to see how that caught on like wildfire and just took off. And so Fernando Mendoza won't be there. So I won't get an interview with him when he comes off the stage, but still going to go to Pittsburgh. Look, the Raiders might trade back into the back end of round 1 for all we know. Still going to talk to many of the prospects that are going to be there in the green room. We'll actually find out in a week or so, maybe even at the end of this week, who's going to be in that green room. The NFL will announce that. So it's going to be exciting. Still excited about the opportunity. It just won't be Fernando Mendoza, and that's fine. There's plenty of times to talk to him. So no worries, all good. It's just, so if you saw it on Twitter at your boy Q254, don't worry. Like I said, not really that big of a deal. The Raiders did go ahead and make official signing a few players on Tuesday as well. Free agent tight end Ian Thomas is re-signing with the Raiders on a 1-year deal. He was with the Raiders in 2025. He was the guy that I thought was going to play a bigger role than he did. I thought everybody on offense was going to play a bigger role than they did in 2025, but he's really a guy that can block. He can pass catch as well. He's a wily veteran, so he'll go along with Brock Bowers, with Big Mike in that tight end room. So Ian Thomas is back for the Raiders, at least for one more year. They also re-signed restricted free agent center Jordan Meredith. He'll obviously be depth along that offensive line. And exclusive rights free agent defensive end Charles Snowden. The Snowman is back, and I thought that was a big deal as well, just because he did and he has shown signs of improvement since being in the league. And obviously Robbie Leonard, who's now the defensive coordinator, moving up from the defensive line coach, knows really well how to use Charles Snowden. So that's good. That's more good depth that'll be there. And like I said, he really has shown to continue to improve each and every year that he's been in the league. And you see him continue to improve with the silver and black. So the Snowman's back. Meredith is back. Ian Thomas is back. Fernando Mendoza met with the Raiders, hung out with them, went and had dinner with them on Tuesday night. As a matter of fact, this is what Ian Rappaport from NFL Network had to say about the meeting, Fernando Mendoza and the Raiders, and just kind of where the Raiders and Mendoza can be at this stage of the game.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. It's over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed right here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. Michigan finished the job and quieted plenty of doubters Monday night, winning the national championship and capping one of the biggest turnaround stories in college basketball. Isaiah Hole of Locked On Wolverines explains.
I was kind of not surprised at all, actually, not even the least bit, considering what we talked about in segment 3 of the show that we posted at 1 a.m. Just seeing the rival narratives, they've really permeated a bit of just the ethos of college basketball in a lot of ways, to the point where like there's people who have tended to come out against Michigan, national voices, Dan Wolken, Ari Wasserman. Wasserman's been less so since like 2021, but who have come to the defense of the Wolverines, and where you just get like a bunch of, I mean, a lot of it is just random accounts, but it's coming from somewhere, and that somewhere tends to emanate from a certain place about 60 miles from where I sit. So, and it's kind of a reflection of their head coach, honestly, with a lot of the things that he's said, these narratives that nobody likes Dusty. Yeah, everyone knows that he's a cheater and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, no coaches like him, and it's obvious. And then yet you've got Dan Hurley saying the kindest of things, Tommy Lloyd saying the kindest of things about Dusty, right? There's no backhanded compliments there. So you have all that just to set the stage. But then on top of that, you have Mike Boynton, Michigan assistant, who really went nuts to CBS, and I love every second of it. So let's read and react. I redacted the swear words for the sake of that's what we do here. He says this, 3 different quotes. I wish people would just write the truth. People are fairly envious of Dusty, and it's because we're doing this. The truth of the matter is most of the people who are frustrated or angry or talking blank online are Michigan State fans, Ohio State fans, because Dusty came in, and instead of trying his hardest to keep away every player on an 8-24 team, he allowed the guys who wanted to leave. And so then what do? Who do you recruit to play at Michigan in April? 6 high school kids? No. So we went out and we tried to be competitive in the portal, and we were. That's quote 1. Quote 2. People just trying to find a reason to bring down what's a pretty remarkable dude, because there's really nothing else to get him on. He's pretty open. He talks to everybody. He works his blank off. He's been successful. And so the only thing is this: when the hate don't work, they start telling lies. And closing out. People making up just complete blank lies about the guys we're trying to supposedly tamper with, like Purdue guard Braden Smith. The narrative was we were trying to recruit Braden Smith at the Big Ten tournament last year. I'll say this: if we could recruit Braden Smith and he went into the portal, we would. But we couldn't recruit Braden Smith because you cannot get juniors into school at Michigan. And people just ran with it. They still run with it. It's irresponsible. It's sad because it's a high enough profile name that it would draw attention. People are just lazy and go with it. People aren't just lazy, honestly. They're malevolent. That's the difference. I've talked a bit, we talk about Jesus on this show. I wear my Jesus is King hat quite often. And I know there's a lot of you that don't want to hear it, but let me explain why this is relevant. Because there is something out there called idolatry, where you worship something that isn't God, and that thing becomes your God. So for the people who are not just like silly trolls that treat this as life and death, and this goes for the football championship in 2023, you get a lot of people who their God is their team. So that's why it turns out to be this life and death thing, right? Like to the point where you get, you should see some of the messages I get from, in football, Ohio State fans. I'm not prominent enough of someone who covers basketball to get anything from MSU fans typically. But you can tell that it goes deeper than just we'll get you next time. Like I always talk about, like what I wish sports could be, just generally fun because that's what it's supposed to be. So instead, what you get is this malevolence because you just by nature of wearing maize and blue as a fan, the team being what it is, Michigan basketball in this case, it draws the ire of these people because you have upset their God just by virtue of existing. Thus, they can't let it stand, and they take a perfectly good guy, perfectly good coach in Dusty May, who is better at the things right now that make up college basketball. Because as much as if you like it or not, the transfer portal, NIL, those are the laws of the land. He's just a better evaluator and assembler of a team than anyone else. Michigan didn't have the most transfers. It did have the number 2 transfer portal class, but mostly with cast-offs that had potential, that had come nowhere close to reaching said potential. And then they come to Ann Arbor, and wouldn't you know it, they all work together to reach their potential. Right? So it's upsetting to the people who worship their sports team, who look at it and say, okay, we need to bring these guys down. It really is just, as he says, jealousy. Ultimately, it's pure jealousy. And that's why you don't even see a lot of the typical bad actors essentially just, once it's said and done, be like, I don't like it, but congratulations, Michigan. You were the best team in the country this year. You see some, and by them, you can tell. Like those aren't the people who are that all in to their sports, which is a good thing, right? Like we should have more than just sports. I say that as someone who makes my livelihood through this. And I think that Mike Boynton coming in, calling all of this out as specifically as he does, noting that this emanates from the MSU and Ohio State fans, and then goes out and permeates through the ecosphere of college basketball, which you just see a lot. Like it's bad enough that there are multiple national writers and articles coming out pushing back on this after Michigan won the national championship. That's why we're talking about this much on this show. Because also I just want to arm you a little bit. If you're a Michigan fan, you might enjoy a bit of the absurdity. You might not. And if you don't, I want to give you a little bit of ammunition. But it's ultimately just jealousy, because there is exactly zero actual evidence-based allegations that Dusty has done anything nefarious whatsoever. So you can celebrate this with the cleanest of consciences. I can understand if you're a Michigan fan that doesn't want us to talk about Connor Stallions, Sharon Moore, any of these things anymore. We're still going to talk about them. Connor's obviously a frequent guest on this show. But at the same time, it's kind of the same thing even with Connor. Connor was so good at doing what he did that he had to be taken down a peg. Dusty May, they're trying to do the same thing with Dusty May. Not the NCAA. This time it's a what you call it? Not fan curated, but what's the word? I'm just going to go with fan sourced event here where they're trying to do the same thing. And that gives the game away like we've been talking about for a while.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. It's over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed right here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. TCU made a long-term commitment to Sonny Dykes with a new extension, a sign the program believes it has the right coach in place moving forward. Next up is Darian Gray from Locked On Horned Frogs with more.
I don't want to be a goalpost shifter. We've had a lot of conversation about pressure and things like that. I believe pressure comes in different formats. We've had conversations of hot seat or no hot seat. That's over. The hot seat conversation is over. The idea that Sonny Dykes can go from having multiple years on his contract, them giving him more years of security on top of that with a contract extension, and then all of a sudden he's on the hot seat less than 365 days later, to me is far-fetched. To me, it's just not realistic. So if you're one of those people who feel like Dykes didn't deserve his contract extension, if you're one of those people who thinks that Dykes should be on the hot seat, you can feel the former, but the latter, please wrap your head around it's not happening unless something dramatic, something absolutely drastic happens, something as a fan you're not going to want to see. If that happens, okay. But to me, Sonny Dykes needs to justify this. This is no longer a wait and see moment. This is go out there and be a contender in 2026. Go out there and have Jaden Craig be the quarterback that you think he is. Because part of being the coach, especially when you're offensive minded, is being able to pick the right quarterback. Of course, that falls on the offensive coordinator as well. But I think we all know, I'll say 7 to 8 times out of 10, the offensive minded head coach is going to draw a lot more criticism. I think that if Kendall Briles wasn't a Briles, we would have seen more criticism on the offensive minded head coach. But like I said, I leave room for 2 or 3 times out of 10 where the OC gets a lot of the blame. But most times the offensive-minded guy is the person who gets the responsibility. They're viewed as the mastermind, things of that nature. In 2026, a massive year looks like October rolls around when you're playing, or November rolls around, and you're playing Utah, Kansas State, Texas Tech, which is the last game of the year. When you're getting into that realm, you are now a contender. You look at 2025, for example, you can point to I always confuse it with mid-October, but it's mid-November. When you lose to Iowa State, that was it. When you lose to Iowa State on November 8th, that was it. That was the end of your Big 12 championship hopes. That was the end of being in the race. That was the end of going through the last 3 weeks and feeling like, oh, we could be a real contender in this thing. That's over with. That's going to BYU, Houston, Cincinnati. And you kind of felt BYU was going to happen the way that it happened. So maybe that's part of the reason it felt over. But you had 3 losses at that point. You end up with 4 on the season. That was it. All she wrote. That's also kind of been the story of the last couple of years. The reason that people are frustrated is not because TCU's final record is ugly. I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, right? Comment, DM me at South Exclusives, join the Everydayer Club, and we can talk about it at length. I don't believe that most TCU fans are upset at the fact that they have 9 wins in each of the last 2 seasons. I think most TCU fans are upset with the fact that the 9 wins have been garnered with a very ugly format. It's been garnered with late finishes. It's been garnered with inconsistency. If you can wipe that off, which I think Dykes is capable of doing. Here's the other thing. Let me make this clear before we continue any further. I'm not saying things that I don't think Dykes can do. I'm not saying things that I don't think Dykes can achieve with the Frogs. Can he achieve it immediately in I say year 1, but that's because I view this as a restart. That's why I wouldn't have given him this contract. I viewed it as a restart, but we'll get into that later. If he's able to achieve it in 2026 is the question. If he's able to do that, that's how you justify it. There's no more pressure to keep your job. So in the grand scheme of things, the only person putting pressure on Sonny Dykes is Dykes himself. I'm sure he wants to achieve greatness, right? The only person putting pressure on Sonny is Sonny himself, fans, and people like me with a microphone in front of them. And we can say all of these things that we want to, but the idea of real pressure is whether or not you're going to lose your job. The idea of real pressure is whether or not you're going to be coaching for your job. I get it. He doesn't have that anymore. He doesn't have that aspect. But what he does have is the pressure to live up to expectations. They looked at us and said, we believe in Sonny so much, we want to keep him around for 6 more years. I'm just throwing it out there because he had 3 more years on his contract, and I think they said it was a multi-year extension. So I feel like 2 to 3 years is probably fair. We want to keep Sonny around for the next half decade. We love it. And we know he can do better than what he's doing. Now he has to go out and prove it, simple and plain. These are 3 methods. These are 3 methods that could get it done, but nothing is bigger than being in the race. I don't care if finishing top 4, you're obviously in the race, right? Like if you finish, or excuse me, if you are in the hunt late, you are going to be top 4, period. You don't have to necessarily beat BYU to be in the race. You don't. But if you are in the race and you lose to BYU, I'm still good. I'm still comfortable. Some people will say, I need a championship ASAP. I don't feel that way. Some will say you need a championship game appearance ASAP. I don't feel that way. I think we have to start with the bottom tier of what it looks like. That's step 2 and 3. I need you to be in the race. See, BYU and Satake, I think he should be feeling some pressure to go get to a championship victory, maybe, right? Because you look at the trajectory of BYU in 2024, they were one of the better teams in the conference, but they didn't quite get to the championship game. In 2025, they were in the championship game. I'm sure there's pressure in 2026 to go win the championship. I think skipping all the steps up to that will be unfair to Dykes. I think that'll be unfair to Sonny Dykes because you first need to get in the race. You need to be 2024 BYU. That's what you need to be. If you're going to give me this contract, if you're going to show me exactly who you believe Dykes to be, Dykes has to show me who you believe him to be as well. That's the way I view it. And the way for Dykes to show me he is who you think he is to have TCU in the race. That means Jaden Craig needs to be a really good quarterback. That means Jeremy Payne in the running game needs to be activated. That means everybody needs to buy in to what it is that Gordon Samus is teaching immediately on the defensive side of the ball. You need to replace pretty much every one of your main contributors outside of Jamel Johnson, Oyewale, right? Like there's some guys, but as far as stars go, it's just Johnson. It's just Johnson. Gil Jackson has been looking really good, though. He's been looking really good at that boundary corner, right? I think Jacob Fields and Julius Sims are engulfed in a battle to play next to Jamel Johnson. You need all of these things, but you got to be hitting on all cylinders. You have to be hitting on all cylinders.
That's all for today's Big 6 and 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 and 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 and 30 NBA, the Big 3 and 30 NFL, or the Big 3 and 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.